we can choose our attitude. We can choose to keep our heads in the absolute rather than in the relative field. We can choose to co-create our lives. That's what this teaching has taught me.
Oh, too much, Maddie. Try again? Keep going. Oh, I'm done. Okay. So, what can we choose? Does anybody know me? Anybody? Exactly. We choose everything. Like Reverend Cathy said, we get to start with our attitudes and our atmosphere and everything. But at the end of the day, we get to choose absolutely every single thing. Every minute of every day, we're choosing. And it can begin with, what do I want to eat? But more importantly, the whole thing about choice, and I'm sure it'll come up again and again today, is that it is ever present in absolutely everything. And if you choose not to choose, remember, you are still choosing. Dr. Ernest Holmes. Yeah.
We have a question from the audience.
Yes! Oh gosh, it's Sherry. Oh yeah.
You guys take a deep breath. Okay. You know, my biggest thing is in my reading, it says that there is no evil. And my big question mark is, really? You want to explain that?
I've been in this teaching for many, many years, and I'm still saying, really? There is no evil? I think that what Dr. Holmes and the Ascended Masters and everybody else meant by saying there is no evil is that evil is a misuse of the same law of creation. It is the same law that's operating very impersonally with what we think, what we believe, what we fear. It responds to. So I'm thinking that when we think of evil, it helps us to be more forgiving and more compassionate when we think it's a misuse of the law, the spiritual law of creation and of attraction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I don't think I need to add too much to that, but I think I'm going to anyway. You gave me the mic. So, absolutely, Dr. Holmes speaks about the misuse of the law. But he also speaks about this idea that God is all there is. God is divine. It is not two elements created. There's not God or God and the devil. There is a balance of positive and negative, just as we have the yin and the yang. But there's no two separate things. It is still all God. It's all the divine and the law. The one is the presence, the other one is the action of the presence. So there's nothing else going on outside that is not the divine. And if the divine is created for good and creates in good and love, that it's given us the ability to create too, and conscious choice, and choice, one more time, to create what it is we desire. So yes, we will misuse this law for lack of understanding. I love it, Dr. Ernest Holmes says, this is the only sin, and he didn't believe in sin. He said this is the only mistake, is to think that there is something else, is to create, to think there is something else going on, that you don't have the choice around it.
On the tail end of that question, there's something going on. On the tail end of that answer, there's something going on. Why are we here, and how can we fulfill our role as being here?
Lovely. Oh, gosh. There you go. Come on, Dr.
This is the point where I become Joe Biden. We're here to learn about love. That's a hard question for me. You know, some people believe that we choose our parents and we choose our experiences before we're born. I don't know about that. I just don't. But all I know is that we are here to reveal the love that's inside us, to reveal the spirit that operates by means of us, and to learn to love one another. You know, Jesus, the master teacher, only had 2 commandments. They're talking about putting 10 commandments into the classrooms, and I'm like, anyway, the 2 commandments were love thy neighbor as thy love yourself, love God, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Boil down to love. That's why we're here.
I agree with that. And then, of course, I've got the Beverley take on it, which is we're here for the joy of God. That's, to me, that is why I get up in the morning. It's because this presence, this energy that we refer to as the divine God, you can call it any name you like, but it is this creative energy that brought everything into creation, wants to have some fun. You know, it has no lips, no mouth, no teeth, no tongue, no arms, no legs. And it can only have its way in this world, on this plane, by expressing through and as all these things. The bamboo, for instance, the cats, fig over there. Every single one of us is this extremely, extremely unique expression of the divine. There's not 2 of us or 2 plants or 2 anything that is identical. Even identical twins are not identical. Why would God create 2 things alike? This is why we all have these individual filters, that we process every single thing so amazingly differently. We can all be looking, like all of you guys are looking at Reverend Cathy and myself right now, and all of you are seeing something completely different. Why would God want to see 2 things the same? So we are here literally, I say, for the joy of God, for the joy of the divine, to have the best possible experience. So this idea that God would want us to suffer and struggle and do all of that stuff, you know, if there's a pony in the poop there somewhere, sure, let's go and trip on it and find some fun in it. But really, we are here to live the best life possible. For that is the divine's desire in its greatest expression of itself. And love is, after all, that greatest desire. That's just my take.
Have fun. See with these questions here, if you have something that, gotcha, just a minute. If you have something that maybe you think you know, but you want to hear from 2 different viewpoints, this is an awesome opportunity to just ask that question. And speaking of questions, I got Tom right there.
Yeah. Here we go.
Okay, let me go to Lisa. I've been pointing.
You know, guys, this is what happened. Just so that you know, we haven't heard any of these questions before. However, I do have a class of 11 people right now that I asked to bring a question. You know that they went like this and went like, ooh, we're going to bring some things. So here it comes.
And there's sometimes out picturings that don't look like love to me. How do we stay, like if they're triggered, like say we're in some sort of thing, how do we stay in love and keep boundaries?
That's a good one.
Why don't you tell us?
That was good. Come on, Dennis. Dennis, come back.
I'm busy thinking about where I'm going next.
That was cold.
This is Ask the Revs. Yeah.
We're just ask the Rev in
So
training.
I don't know. Like, okay, for example, we'll just say there was a thing on TV, and there's points of view I don't agree with. emotion feels like electric short circuit. How do you suggest something to get calm? How do you return to love and grace?
I got it.
All right, I got it.
Well, I mean, I got what works for me, and this is my teacher of ministry taught me this a long time ago when I was ranting about something. Can't remember what. It was a person, but she said to me, she said, I want you to repeat this statement. I bless him and I release him to his highest good. And she goes, at first, you'll be saying it like this. But I promise you, it's like adding a drop of clean water to dirty water. Every time you do it, it clarifies the water, and then your charge leaves, and it's absolutely true. So can you imagine how many, I'm sorry anybody who is a Trump supporter, but can you imagine how many times I've said that about the orange man? Oh my God. Thousands, and I'm still saying it like this with that person, but with other people it eases off very easily and it takes away the charge and helps you to. The other thing is when somebody around here, locally, friends or whatever, do something that irritates me, or a driver does something that irritates me, I try to ask myself, when have I done the same thing? And guarantee you, I always get an answer, and that makes it also easier for me to maintain boundaries and to forgive at the same time.
Yeah, let's hear it. I don't know.
I bet that's not you.
Well, you know, the thing about it, it goes back one more time to the fact that we're such individuals. That, you know, so often this thing that we're not seeing together is just because we're doing the 6 and the 9. You know, you're standing on one side of one thing on the other. And so we're seeing exactly the same thing with different filters. And I think one of the biggest things that charges, the biggest hook, should I say, for us, or that trigger, is not being heard. You know, so often we're not being heard. Or what the person is saying is, for you, completely untrue. And there's no point. When we get triggered like that, there's no way of finding the common ground because there's the 6 and the 9. And so we're looking at the same things, and we're seeing them differently. But I think the hardest part for us to move through is the communication skill. To be able to communicate, be able to hear, as well as listen, all at the same time. And then go, I'm still not buying this shit, all right? And I love you, I bless you, and I'm the hell out of here. You know, it's okay not to have to, you don't always have to. You can love people, but you don't have to be in love with them. Okay?
I've often wondered if a politician irritates you if they're just going, yeah, that's what I want.
Do you know something? This is one of the greatest opportunities, and I spoke to this at our circle, about us coming up to this year where we are going to, or this next 6 months, where there's going to be a lot of interesting and probably unskilled communication going on, not just through our media, but around us in our areas where people cannot find the right way to express their emotions, cannot not be defensive. And this is the time where we can come to that place of looking through everything to see the God in everybody. Regardless of what the condition is around it, we get called to look through it to the greater good. Because we have no idea why each individual person has come to the point that they have come to. And in 1 second of communication, all of that stuff is just put aside to hit that end result. That end result of either aggressive communication or aggressive receiving. So there is the call. The call is to peace. The call is to understanding. The call is to go, that person's never going to really understand me. I won't really understand them. And guess what? It's okay. Because you've got to remember this one very important thing. There will never be somebody's eyes you look into that God does not love. There will never be somebody's eyes you look into that God does not love.
All right. We have a question right here.
Okay, so I've studied science of mind in other places that I live, taken several classes. I'm wondering what science of mind says about the ascension,
What science of mind says about the ascension?
if anything. I was part of a spiritual group many years ago, and it was the teachings of ascended masters, and they taught about the ascension. So,
Just clarity, you're referring to the resurrection of the Christ? The
No.
ascension of Christ? What are you referring to as the ascension?
well, what was taught in this other church that I was in was that we can all ascend at some point in time. We don't have to keep coming back here if you believe in reincarnation. That you can, ascend and go on to, it's not like it ever ends, but you would just go on to different things. So does Science of Mind talk about anything like that?
Okay. So Dr. Holmes was always very, he never said too much about reincarnation. He did speak about reincarnation. He did speak to the idea that there's a tremendous amount of evidence, so to speak, that this is a possibility. But he would say, why would we come back? So that's the one part of Science of Mind, is why would we come back here? He always, the science, in his teaching, he taught that there's an ever ascending cycle upwards. And then you just keep moving and moving until you reach that ultimate Christ consciousness. So that's what the teaching teaches, that there's a continual upward cycle. Coming back, he doesn't know. He couldn't say for sure whether he believed it or not. He said there's evidence for it, and everybody gets to choose what they believe, because that's important in Science of Mind. But he always said he didn't understand why we would come back and do this again. We would rather level up each time.
Do you feel like we ascend each time we do a good treatment? Do we ascend in a way?
Well, what do you think, Dennis?
I think so. I just thought
How does it feel to you when you do a good treatment?
It feels like ascending in a way, yeah.
Yes.
And you don't always come all the way back down.
Isn't that the beauty of it all, is that it's accumulative? The more we do our spiritual mind treatments, the more we put this positive spin and the search for this wonderment that is the divine in everything, it's accumulative. So it's not just practicing and getting better at it, because actually July we talk about practice makes imperfect. This is a wonderful way of getting us into this whole idea of every time we do it, we lay a little bit, it's like phyllo pastry. Every prayer is a layer of phyllo pastry, and you put the butter in between, and eventually you wrap it all up, and you bake this big, fluffy, huge dessert. I mean, isn't that divine?
Well said, well said.
What do you think?
I'm in when it's a big, fluffy, huge dessert.
Good morning, Revs. Oh, this is kind of a multi-question, so there's like a two-part,
This is the
maybe a three-part.
practitioner in the house. For those that didn't know, you'll meet him next week officially. Sean Ferguson has just joined our team as our brand new practitioner, coming to us from Oregon. Oregon. Yeah.
I'm curious about the practitioner consciousness, what that means to you, and how long were you a practitioner before you decided, twofold, what made you want to become a practitioner, and then once you were a practitioner, how long did you serve as a practitioner before you said, I want to go all the way?
Yeah. Not long enough.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Do you want to go with that?
I did it simultaneously, Sean. I got slain by the Spirit when my husband took me up to Asilomar, which, if you live in Southern California, you know about, or in California, Oregon. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful retreat center. And back in the day, the Unity, the Science of Mind, both branches used to have conferences there. So my husband said, we should go to this, you'll like it. And all I knew about was road trip to Monterey, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm in. But the very first day, seeing all those ministers and all those people, it just blew me away. And I remember coming back to our room and telling my husband, I'm going to become a minister. And he was like, what the hell? You know?
What have I done?
His little head was spinning around, but that is what I did. I immediately came back and I found out that Religious Science International, before we reunited, would, if you could find a home church that was having a ministerial class, you could join that and learn at your own church, which was the only way I could do it, because I was doing educational consulting at the time and flying all over. So I found the church that I wanted. I took the first Science of Mind 1 class, they called it back then, and so there was no gap. Became a practitioner first, but I was already doing the studying.
All right.
Yeah, I wish I knew about RSI. Yeah. I went through what came about as being the UCRS, which is the United Church of Religious Science side of it. But when I stepped in, we had already united and become Centers for Spiritual Living. But the education, they decided to go with the UCRS side, which was a lot more intense. There's neither good nor bad in this, just a different way of coming to it. I remember walking into Pacific Church of Religious Science when Dr. Cathy was the minister. And it was my first day in her church. And she did a spiritual mind treatment for the talk. So she did the first step, and then somebody sang, and then another step, somebody sang. So the whole service was just a spiritual mind treatment. So you can imagine the level and the height of the feeling. So I walk out into the lobby, and here are all these people, little tiny tables, 2 people sitting around. And I looked at her and I said, you know, what are they doing? She goes, they're praying. And I said to her, that's what I want to do. So I had no idea what that meant, none whatsoever. I had no idea that there was training, it's prayer. But there is, because we have a specific kind of training. So I did my first foundations class, which is the first prerequisite that you have to take in order to take all of the other accredited classes, regardless if you want to be a practitioner or not. And at that very first meeting, they asked each and everybody why they were there. And I got up and I said, because I want to be a practitioner. It was a decision came to me on the very first day. I became a practitioner in, I think it was 16, something like that. And I was going to be a practitioner less than 6 months before I stepped into my ministerial education. It was crazy. People were saying you should wait. I said, I've waited 55 years. I'm not waiting any longer for this. And one of my mentors, she knew that I was going to start ministerial training before I started my 2nd year of practitioner. I didn't know, but she did. And people have asked me what was my call to ministry. And I was driving along the road from Yuma, Arizona to Phoenix. And I'm just driving along the road there. And in front of me, much like a Mel Brooks movie where those big block letters come up out of the ground, it said, just get started. Because I had no idea. I'm like, ministry, what am I doing? And I had no idea what or how to do it. And I'm driving thinking I'm going to run into these big letters. Of course you don't. Just get started. So that was the call to ministry. So I went from my first foundations class, which was the first of my prerequisite, to actually licensing in 8 years, which is a fast track. Yeah. But you know what? Everything fell so much into place that I could not deny it at all. We recommend that you be a practitioner for a while longer, but, you know, when the call's the call, the call's the call. So you just keep moving through it.
All right, thank you. Looking at grandfather clock on the wall, I think we got time for one more question, and it's Ann.
Hi. Revs.
Look at the look on her face. You know she's coming with something.
Well, so I seem to be able to hold space for others' highest and best good. And I know that Ernest teaches that we've always been co-creating. And if we don't like the results, then we need to choose something else. So how do we deepen our faith in our own ability to co-create for ourselves?
Cultivate your spiritual practice, and it looks different for everybody, but whatever, for me, it's been my first thing I do every morning for years and years has been, even when I went through the hardest year of my life this last year, has been to wake up and start to think of things that I'm grateful for and come into that. And learning about spiritual mind treatment, all prayer is effective, but it is a very, very effective because it brings your head right where it needs to be to co-create. Brings your head, the first two steps are all about reuniting with God and knowing that you're one with God. So you get reminded every day when you do spiritual mind treatment. Learning about forgiveness, learning about I bless him and release him to his highest good. These are the ways. And noticing the small things, recognizing that, there's a big joke that everybody who comes into Science of Mind, the first thing they learn how to demonstrate is a parking space. Yeah. But noticing the little things and saying thank you. I say thank you out loud so many times. And my dogs look at me and go, "Are you talking to me?" I'm going, talking to God. Thank you for the littlest things that happen. I think that's how you cultivate.
And God and dog, same word, right? There we go. That's why they do that. How do we deepen the faith? Whenever we speak about something, we claim, we get to a point where there's a but. So we say, yes, I am deepening and I'm confident in everything happening exactly as it should, but I'm da-da-da-da-da-da. So everything after the but is what's going to negate what you just claimed. So the idea behind that is that we have evidence already. You all have had evidence of prayer working. You have all evidence of when you've claimed something wonderful for it happening. But there's this idea that it was a coincidence. Oh, maybe this time, but maybe not next time. We have this innate desire not to trust, this innate desire to not believe, when in actuality, it takes as much energy to go, well, if it happened that time and it was all worked out beautifully, well, let's happen again. Why the but not this time? So I think this idea that people have brought to me, there's evidence of. Like every time something good happens, there's evidence of. Well, don't negate the evidence. Lean in deeper to the evidence. Lean in deeper to that. That'll help create the faith. Absolutely. What Reverend Cathy said about your spiritual practice and getting in alignment with the divine and just recognizing it in the parking places, princes and palaces, as they say, every time something happens, go, bing, there it is, there it is, there it is. This helps you build your faith. This is building your box of evidence. Don't kick it under the bed. Don't. You're getting ready for this great day and you're going to go along and do it. Then you're going to go, yeah, but what if? Yeah, I don't have time for what ifs. There's endless roads of what ifs. Just as, what if it worked out exactly perfectly, just as I wanted? That's the only what if you need to go to. So that's one way as well, is recognizing in the moment that there's no reason to set yourself up for failure. And a but is the first word in failure. Okay. So I'm going to ask Reverend Cathy if she would just do a grounding prayer for us for this time together.
My honor. So let's just stay in the consciousness of the one that we established the minute we walked through this door into this beautiful sanctuary. And let's just know that what Sandy claimed this morning has already happened, that everybody walks away with something that they needed to hear to deepen their spiritual practice, to add evidence to their box of evidence, to know the truth. And so we say thank you for that. We say thank you for our beautiful community. We say thank you for our Sunday gatherings, for all the events, and all the people that helped to make this happen. This is a beautiful thing. And we most say thank you for this building, which is a beautiful demonstration of the power of co-creation. So we know that we can co-create, and we go out with the commitment to co-create beautiful things today and beyond, and we're so thankful for it. We accept it, we release our words to the law, we let it be so, and so it is.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, this was a great situation. I hope you do it again. Everyone who took advantage of this situation with a question, ace. This place was ace. Way to go, everybody.
So while we are getting our